Do you know the story of the fish god?
What's up, guys? Genuine Panda here, and I'm here to bring you the immersive story Dagon, a horror story inspired by HP Lovecraft. I love Cthulhu and anything done by HP Lovecraft. It is such a wonderful and inspiring horror theme, and I'm excited for this one. So without further ado, we're gonna jump right into it. Dagon is a faithful interactive adaptation of H.P. Lovecraft's work focused on the story and atmosphere. You will not find difficult choices, action sequences, or inventory management here, and movement is limited to progressing through locations along with the plot.
I am writing this under an appreciable mental strain, since by tonight I shall be no more.
I love it. It's
penniless, and at the end of my supply of the drug which alone makes life endurable. I can bear the torture no longer, and shall cast myself from this garret window into the squalid street below.
nice. Wait, no.
Do not think from my slavery to morphine that I am a weakling or a degenerate.
Yo, I want the wallpaper. That is so cool.
When you have read these hastily scrawled pages, you may guess, though never fully realize, why it is that I must have forgetfulness or death.
Or death. Okay, so
It was in one of the most open and least frequented parts of the broad Pacific that the packet of which I was supercargo fell a victim to the German sea raider.
that's cool.
The Great War was then at its very beginning, and the ocean forces of the Hun had not completely sunk to their later degradation.
Yo, look at the water. The water is super clean. Like, oh my god. It's crispy.
So that our vessel was made a legitimate prize, whilst we of her crew were treated with all the fairness and consideration due us as naval prisoners.
Oh, they're prisoners. The Huns were Central Asian nomads who established a dominion in Europe and invaded the Roman Empire in the 5th century AD. They were known as brutal, deadly warriors and masters of quick raids, who also developed powerful composite bows, lassos, and early siege weapons. During the World War I, the British used the word Huns as a synonym for Germans in order to emphasize their brutality. However, the term originated when the German Emperor William II gave a speech to his troops on the 27th of July of the 1900s, before they embarked to China. Should you encounter the enemy, he will be defeated. No quarter will be given. Prisoners will not be taken. Whoever falls into your hands is forfeited. Just as 1,000 years ago, the Huns ordered their king Attila made a name for themselves, one that even today makes them seem mighty in history and legend. May the name German be affirmed by you in such a way in China that no Chinese will ever again dare to look cross-eyed at a German. That's fun. The refusal to take prisoners was a clear breach of the laws and customs of war adopted during the First Hague Convention of 1899. Neat.
So liberal, indeed, was the discipline of our captors, that 5 days after we were taken, I managed to escape alone in a small boat with water and provisions for a good length of time.
How did he manage that? Take all our stuff and leave.
When I
Be on our
finally
way.
found myself adrift and free, I had but little idea of my surroundings.
Yeah, we're literally in the middle of the ocean. Oh my gosh. That looks so cool.
Never a competent navigator, I could only guess vaguely by the sun and stars that I was somewhat south of the equator.
Fair
Of
enough.
the longitude, I knew nothing, and no island or coastline was in sight.
We're just out here forever in the ocean. Jeez. Food, water, oars. No? Oh, the moon.
The weather kept fair, and for uncounted days I drifted aimlessly beneath the scorching sun, waiting either for some passing ship or to be cast on the shores of some habitable land.
Drifting in the ocean for days. Gosh. Running out of water and bedding.
But neither ship nor land appeared, and I began to despair in my solitude upon the heaving vastness of unbroken blue.
Man must be going crazy.
The change happened whilst I slept. Its details I shall never know, for my slumber, though troubled and dream-infested, was continuous.
Oh. Oh, that's gnarly. Nice. Nice.
When at last I awoke, it was to discover myself half sucked into a slimy expanse of hellish black mire, which extended about me in monotonous undulations as far as I could see.
That's cool. Tentacles.
And in which my boat lay grounded some distance away.
Well, at least we made it to some sort of land.
Though one might well imagine that my first sensation would be of wonder at so prodigious and unexpected a transformation of scenery, I was in reality more horrified than astonished. For there was in the air and in the rotting soil a sinister quality which chilled me to the very core. The region was putrid with the carcasses of decaying fish.
Oh, the gooey
and other
sound.
less describable things which I saw protruding from the nasty mud of the unending plain. Perhaps I should not hope to convey in mere words the unutterable hideousness that can dwell in absolute silence and barren immensity.
Yo,
there was nothing
the
within
reflection
hearing,
and detail
and nothing
of it.
in sight
That's so
save
cool.
a vast reach of black slime. Yet the very completeness of the stillness and the homogeneity of the landscape oppressed me with a nauseating fear. The sun was blazing down from a sky which seemed to me almost black in its cloudless cruelty, as though reflecting the inky marsh beneath my feet.
Oh my goodness. That is crazy. Oh! He's so gooey. Can move on from there. Oh, this is... Dagon seems to be inspired by Fishhead, a short novel by Irvin S. Cobb about unnatural affinities between hybrid idiot and the strange fish of an isolated lake. Supernatural horror and literature, H.P. Lovecraft. And Lovecraft's dream about a strange island emerging from the ocean and him crawling in the ooze that covered its surface. I dreamed that whole hideous crawl and can yet feel the ooze sucking me down. Indifference of Dagon, H.P. Lovecraft. Lovecraft's interest in the topic stemmed from his aversion to fish and sea smells, in his own words. I have hatched fish and feared the sea and everything connected with it since I was 2 years old, but I cannot recall what earlier experience gave me such a profound and lasting aversion to the sea and seafood. The Dweller in Darkness, Lovecraft, 1927. My goodness. I love the detail of it. It's so cool. Oh.
As I crawled into
gooey.
the stranded boat, I realized that only one theory could explain my position. Through some unprecedented volcanic upheaval,
dreaming.
a portion of the ocean floor must have been thrown to the surface, exposing regions for which innumerable millions of years had lain hidden
it's
under
breathing over there.
unfathomable watery depths.
What is that?
So great was the extent of the new land which had risen beneath me that I could not detect the faintest noise of the surging ocean, straining my ears as I might. Nor were there any seafowl to prey upon the dead things.
Wow, this is cool. It's so gooey. Can't grab anything. Okay, keep going.
For several hours I sat thinking or brooding in the boat, which lay upon its side and afforded a slight shade as the sun moved across the heavens. As the day progressed, the ground lost some of its stickiness and seemed likely to dry sufficiently for traveling purposes in a short time.
Oh, that's good.
That night I slept but little.
Whoa.
And the next day I made for myself a pack containing
Whoa.
food and water, preparatory to an overland journey in search of the vanished sea and possible rescue.
Oh my. We don't look like we're in a good spot here. We don't probably get much sleep here.
On the third morning, I found the soil dry enough to walk upon with ease. The odor of the fish was maddening, but I was too much concerned with graver things to mind so slight an evil, and set out boldly for an unknown goal.
It's like a crunchy, gooey sound.
All day I forged
Whoa, look at
steadily
those.
westward, guided by a faraway hummock which rose higher than any other elevation on the rolling desert.
Wow. A black tar desert? That's crazy. Wonder what happens if you touch it.
I encamped, and on the following day still travelled toward the hummock, though that object seemed scarcely nearer than when I had first espied it.
Dum, 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 dum.
By the fourth evening, I attained the base of the mound, which turned out to be much higher than it had appeared from a distance.
Yeah, it's massive, bro.
An intervening valley setting it out in sharper relief from the general surface. Too weary to ascend, I slept in the shadow of the hill.
Might as well wait till morning.
I know not why my dreams were so wild that night, but ere the waning and fantastically gibbous moon had risen far above the eastern plain,
I love the narrator.
I was awake in a cold perspiration, determined to sleep no more. Such visions as I had experienced were too much for me to endure again. And in the glow of the moon I saw how unwise I had been to travel by day. Without the glare of the parching sun, my journey would have cost me less energy.
Oh, wow.
Indeed, I now felt quite able to perform the ascent which had deterred me at sunset. Picking up my pack, I started for the crest of the eminence.
So we're gonna climb at night. Onward.
I have said that the unbroken monotony of the rolling plain was a source of vague horror to me. But I think my horror was greater when I gained the summit of the mound and looked down the other side into an immeasurable pit or canyon. Whose black recesses the moon had not yet soared high enough to illumine. I felt myself on the edge of the world, peering over the rim into a fathomless chaos of eternal night. Through my terror ran curious reminiscences of Paradise Lost,
Yo, look at those
and of
stars.
Satan's hideous climb through the unfashioned realms of darkness.
It looks like the real night sky.
As
That
the
is really
moon
cool.
climbed higher in the sky, I began to see that the slopes of the valley were not quite so perpendicular as
Oh, that's all I'd imagine. I didn't mean to press that.
ledges and outcroppings of rock afforded fairly easy footholds for a descent.
For a descent.
Whilst after a drop of only a few hundred feet, the declivity became very gradual.
One by one. Just a really cool visual
Urged
game.
on by an impulse which I cannot definitely analyze, I scrambled with difficulty down the rocks and stood on the gentler slope beneath, gazing into the Stygian deeps, where no light had yet penetrated. All at once, my attention was captured by a vast and singular object on the opposite slope, which rose
Whoa.
steeply about 100 yards ahead of me.
That wasn't there beforehand.
An object that gleamed whitely in the newly bestowed rays of the ascending moon.
That was not there beforehand. I will say. Like, no.
That it was merely a gigantic piece of stone, I soon assured myself. But I was conscious of a distinct impression that its contour and position were not altogether the work of nature. A closer scrutiny filled me with sensations I cannot express.
But does anybody else see, like, it looks like there was that stone statue, that obelisk that was in the middle of the desert, and they also found one across the world elsewhere. Like, that resembles that pretty decent. I mean, just like obviously on a more larger scale and stuff, but hey, that's kind of makes you wonder.
For despite its enormous magnitude and its position in an abyss which had yawned at the bottom of the sea since the world was young, I perceived beyond a doubt that the strange object was a well-shaped monolith.
A monolith!
Whose massive bulk had known the workmanship and perhaps the worship of living and thinking creatures. Dazed and frightened, yet not without a certain thrill of the scientist's or archaeologist's delight, I examined my surroundings more closely.
Look through the darkness. See what else you find. Whoa. Oh, the water again.
Now near the zenith, shone weirdly and vividly above the towering steeps that hemmed in the chasm.
Whoa.
And revealed the fact that a far-flung body of water flowed at the bottom, winding out of sight in both directions and almost lapping my feet as I stood on the slope. Across
the sound.
chasm, the wavelets washed the base of the cyclopean monolith, on whose surface I could now trace both inscriptions and crude sculptures.
That's cool. I like that. Nothing, no moon.
The writing was in a system of hieroglyphics unknown to me and unlike anything I'd ever seen in books, consisting for the most part of conventionalized aquatic symbols such as fishes, eels, octopi, crustaceans, mollusks, whales, and the like.
Under the sea.
Several characters obviously represented marine things which are unknown to the modern world, but whose decomposing forms I had observed on the ocean-risen plain. It was the pictorial carving, however, that did most to hold me spellbound.
Yeah, that is really cool. Dagon contains many themes and storytelling methods that Lovecraft developed in his later works, such as the telling story through the carvings, journals and characters' notes, and the shadow out of time, island emerging from the ocean, or fictional beings and deities based on real events and mythologies. It also considered that the origin of the popular Cthulhu mythos. Some of Lovecraft's other stories also concluded in a manner similar to Dagon, but let's skip to the details in order not to spoil the ending. I love it. That's cool. Man, I love that. That is awesome. Like, wow.
Plainly visible across the intervening water, on account of their enormous size, were an array of bas-reliefs whose subjects would have excited the envy of a doré. I think that these things were supposed to depict men, at least a certain sort of men.
Like the souls of men?
Were shown disporting like fishes in the waters of some marine grotto.
Men.
Or paying homage at some monolithic shrine, which appeared to be under the waves as well.
Like the one that we're looking at?
Of their faces and forms I dare not speak in detail, for the mere remembrance makes me grow faint. Grotesque beyond the imagination of Poe or a Bulwer. They were damnably human in general outline, despite webbed hands and feet, shockingly wide and flabby lips.
Those are cool. Oh my god. They're like sea creatures.
Glassy,
like fully
bulging eyes, and other features less pleasant to recall. Curiously enough, they seem to have been chiseled badly out of proportion with their scenic background. For one of the creatures was shown in the act of killing a whale, represented as but little larger than himself.
Wow, that's huge.
I remarked, as I say, their grotesqueness and strange size, but in a moment decided that they were merely the imaginary gods of some primitive fishing or seafaring tribe.
Okay.
Some tribe whose last descendant had perished eras before the first ancestor of the Piltdown or Neanderthal man was born.
Oh, okay, okay. Alright, let's keep going.
Awestruck at this unexpected glimpse into a past beyond the conception of the most daring anthropologist, I stood musing whilst the moon cast queer reflections on the silent channel before me. Then, suddenly, I saw it.
What did you see? Oh.
Only a slight churning to mark its rise to the surface, the thing slid into view above the dark waters.
Nice. Ooh!
Fearsome and loathsome, it darted like a stupendous monster.
Oh my god.
To the monolith,
Look at its hands. It's huge.
about which it flung its gigantic scaly arms, while it bowed its hideous head and gave vent to certain measured sounds.
Wow.
I
It
think
just
I
knocked
went
him out.
mad then.
I think I went mad.
The descent of the slope and cliff, and of my delirious journey back to the stranded boat, I remember little.
We go.
I
Oh
believe I
my.
sang a great deal and laughed oddly when I was unable to sing.
Wow. Do, 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 do. Do.
I have indistinct recollections of a great storm.
Oh, we made it back to the boat.
Reached the boat. At any rate, I know that I heard pearls of thunder and other tones which nature utters only in her wildest moods.
Wow. Ting.
When I came out of the shadows, I was in a San Francisco hospital,
What?
brought thither by the captain of the American ship which had picked up my boat in mid-ocean. In my delirium, I had said much, but found that my words had been given scant attention.
Wow.
Of any land upheaval in the Pacific, my rescuers knew nothing.
They just randomly found you?
Nor did I deem it necessary to insist upon a thing which I knew they could not believe.
Oh. Lovecraft was a prominent figure in the world of amateur journalism. In 1915, he started publishing his own journal called The Conservative, which included political and social commentary, poetry, short stories, and literary criticism written by him and other authors. Howard was a skilled wordsmith, but he also took the criticisms to heart, which resulted in his decision to step away from writing poetry and concentrate on weird fiction again. For the first time since his teenage years, Dagon, published in 1918, is one of the short stories written during that period. In this example excerpt from The Conservative, the master of horror fiction explained his attitude toward warfare and the idea of world peace. Why any sane human being can believe in the possibility of universal peace is more than the Conservative can fathom. Should the entire civilized world agree to simultaneously to disarm, one or more nations would undoubtedly retain secret armaments at the proper time, take advantage of their more altruistic and less astute contemporaries in a wild career of conquest against unarmed victims. No country is or ever can be above warfare until the basic impulses of the human animal shall have miraculously changed. Wow. I mean, he's not wrong. Like people are shady. people can be really terrible sometimes. So it does happen.
Once I sought out a celebrated ethnologist and amused him with peculiar questions regarding the ancient Philistine legend of Dagon, the fish god.
The fish god. Dagon the fish god. Dagon was the main deity of the Philistines, worshipped throughout the Middle East as the ancient god of fertility and crops. In Hebrew, the word Dagon means a common noun for grain. The ruler of Akkad, Mesopotamia, chose him as the patron saint of their war conquest. He also appeared as the judge of the dead in an Assyrian poem and an underworld prison warden in one of the Babylonian texts. He is often mistakenly taken for a fish god due to the wrong interpretation of his name, as in Hebrew the word dag means fish. In H.P. Lovecraft's words, Dagon is an underwater deity ruling over the deep ones, a humanoid race with fish traits that resides in the oceans. He is worshipped by a secret cult called the Historic Order of Dagon. Esoteric. That's cool. It's really cool. Alright. What else? The cabin? Is there anything else? Wait. No. Okay. And then...
But soon perceiving that he was hopelessly conventional, I did not press my inquiries.
He didn't seem too helpful, I guess. August Derleth was an American writer and an anthologist. He had also befriended Lovecraft and published many of his works throughout his company, Arkham House, although he greatly contributed to the popularization of the author's work after his death. He is surrounded by numerous controversies. One of his most questionable decisions involved introducing the good versus evil doctrine. Derleth was a devout Catholic to the Cthulhu mythos, which contrasted with Lovecraft's view of the world and his approach to cosmic horror. As a result, the author's work are often misunderstood and misrepresented in today's culture. It is also worth noting that Lovecraft was never really interested in creating a mythology, and the term Cthulhu mythos was coined by Derleth after the author left the mortal plane. Now, so Cthulhu was meant to more to just be kind of fun. And it turned into a godly experience. All hail Cthulhu. I'm confused. Okay.
It is at night,
Oh.
especially when the moon is gibbous and waning, that I see the thing. I tried morphine, but the drug has given only transient cesses and has drawn me into its clutches as a hopeless slave.
I tried morphine. It made me not feel better. It made me loopy. It made me say some weird things, but didn't actually help with the nightmares.
So now I am to end it all, having written a full account for the information or the contemptuous amusement of my fellow men.
Wow.
Often, I ask myself if it could not all have been a pure phantasm, a mere freak of fever as I lay sun-stricken and raving in the open boat after my escape from the German man of war. This I ask myself, but ever does there come before me a hideously vivid vision in reply. I cannot think of the deep sea without shuddering at the nameless things that may at this very moment be crawling and floundering on its slimy bed, worshipping their ancient stone idols and carving their own detestable
Oh my
likenesses
gosh.
on submarine obelisks of water-soaked granite.
That is cool.
I dream of a day when they may rise above the billows to drag down into their reeking talons the remnants of puny, war-exhausted mankind. Of a day when the land shall sink and the dark ocean shall ascend amidst universal pandemonium.
Wow. Look at all those monsters. That's where Godzilla came from.
The end is near.
The end is nigh. Gooey. Gooey.
I hear a noise at the door, as of some immense slippery body lumbering against it.
Gooey. Anything else? No. we go.
It shall not find me.
It shall not find me. Oh, it found me.
God, that hand. The window. The window.
Into the window. Ever so slowly. Oh no, he just jumped out the window to his death. Well, that was Dagon. That was super awesome. Short and sweet, right to the point, lots of fun. I love it. I thought it was super cool. Oh my god, it was so beautiful to look at. That was the best. So if you guys like more of this, make sure you leave a like, drop a comment, tell me if you really love Cthulhu, if you know a lot more about Cthulhu, if you know about Dagon at all. That would be really cool. And yeah, we'll see you in the next one. Have a good one, guys.